I think that you still get a meal, but maybe not like the entertainment or the shopping or, the whole cruise package, but you get to stay on a boat and travel for like, 10, 15 days or something like that.
This is Worldschooling Q&A. I'm Astrid, creator of The Wandering Daughter. As a traveling family, we've spent 4 years traveling full-time to over 18 countries and 6 continents. Wherever we go, we try to learn as much as we can about the countries and cultures we visit. While we didn't coin the term, we like to call this worldschooling, using the world as our classroom. Each week, my husband Clint and I will answer one question about worldschooling and share our experiences of traveling the world with our kids. Ready to get started? Great! Let's dive in.
So for today's question, we're answering, how can I find affordable accommodations while worldschooling?
Yeah, so in a previous episode, we talked about using Airbnb as our kind of primary way of finding accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some tips in there about how to find affordable Airbnbs. I think this one, we just want to dive in more into like, how do we find affordable accommodations in general beyond kind of the Airbnb stuff we talked about?
Yeah, because, lodging ends up, when you think about your travel budget, lodging ends up being like one of those big, besides, the airfare, I think lodging is one of those major costs that you have to think about. And so it's always our objective to try and find like affordable ways to make that possible.
Yeah. So what's one way we can avoid or find more affordable accommodations?
Well, one thing, and this applies to like hotels, Airbnbs, anything, is you're going to find that things are more expensive when you're either in a big city or in a place that's like popular for tourists. Mm-hmm. So if you're really on a tight budget, consider looking at places that are just outside of the city limits or not necessarily like a tourist destination.
Yeah, I think the clearest example of this perhaps is maybe like New York City, for example, where the closer you are to Manhattan, the hotel rates are going to be phenomenally higher than if you were in a different borough, for example, where you had to take the subway into Manhattan. So I think that's with any major city. I think it's mostly major cities that this is going to be an issue, except maybe like smaller towns that are tourist destinations, sometimes often just staying in a town that's outside of that.
Yeah.
And taking a bus into that town can be considerably less expensive.
And, you also have to factor in like, how often are you going to be going to that destination? So, and the cost of like shuttling back and forth, it not only in like money, but in time and things like that. But that's definitely a tip, just a basic tip.
I think another great example that we had recently of this is last year we stayed in Scotland, and we were actually staying in a small town 45 minutes outside of Edinburgh. And it was part of our stay was during the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Mm-hmm. And so all the accommodations in Edinburgh themselves were insanely expensive, really expensive, hard to get. But staying just a couple towns out or 45 minutes outside of Edinburgh, the prices were considerably less for us.
Yeah.
And then we were able to just take a simple train into Edinburgh.
It was a 45-minute train ride in, and then you didn't have to think about like driving or anything like that. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like, we mentioned Airbnb last episode. What are some ways that we can make, vacation rentals in general a little bit more affordable?
I think the biggest thing is stay longer if you can. Short-term rentals are really expensive. And even when I say stay longer, like a month or 2 months or 3 months if you can, those are still considered technically short-term rentals, but they're longer than vacation rentals. So vacation rentals, it's just the nature of the market. They're going to charge more because there's more labor involved in cleaning it between and making sure it's stocked or whatever the case is. So the longer you can stay, the more leverage you have also to negotiate prices. We talked about in the Airbnb episode, sometimes you can negotiate a discount.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to book a place for, say, a month or two, then that eases a lot of cases, not all the time, but a lot of cases for the host. That's like, oh, I know that this place is booked for 2 months. So I don't have to worry about not having income during those 2 months. And so sometimes that can mean it gives you leverage to negotiate prices.
Yeah. Some destinations have local like rental companies that offer like month or multi-month stays that like I'm thinking about when we were staying in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yeah.
Like we went there's in I think near Progreso, and then also the company that we went through in Playa del Carmen. So, like, you could try and look for like local vacation rental companies, and sometimes their rates may be a little bit cheaper or more affordable than like, the global ones.
Yeah. So beyond like renting or leasing an apartment or going through Airbnb, what are some other ways that we've used to find accommodations?
One of the platforms or ways that we like to stay is house sitting. So we use a platform called Trusted House Sitters, but there's other house sitting platforms too. I think Mine My House or something like that is another one that others do. I found that Trusted House Sitters has the most options. And since we already have like a profile on there, it's easier to just find house sitting gigs that way. What have you thought about like when it comes to house sitting? What are your thoughts on that?
I I love it for the most part. I think house sitting is an amazing way to stay at someone's home in a residential area and really get a feel for what it's like to live there. We've stayed in some beautiful homes with some really gracious hosts. We've been in the UK and done house sitting. The kids love it because they get to take care of animals,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of fun. It does change your travel style, though.
Yes.
There's not as much flexibility as far as your time goes because you do have a pet to take care of. So, and they're trusting you with taking care of that
Yep.
pet properly. So, it does change how you're going to be in an area.
Yeah.
We really like it because I think we get to feel what it's like to live in that area, but we do have to work around it. It's not as easy as staying at like a vacation rental or an apartment
Yep.
where it's just us. So I think that's a challenge. I think the other challenge, which ties into the next one too, you can talk about, but like the other challenge is that it is really someone's home. It's not a short-term rental. And so in that case, the classic, like, it's someone else's home, please take care of it, applies really critically to house sitting as well.
Well, so I have an article on my site about house sitting and like tips for house sitting with kids. And something that I mentioned in there is think of it as, don't think of it as free accommodations, think of it as a job.
Yeah.
Because you are essentially taking care of somebody's like family member.
Yeah.
A lot of pet owners think that their pets are part of their family. And so even just the process of applying for house sitting, like some families get deterred because they're like, we're always getting rejected. Nobody wants to hire or, nobody wants to like have a family house sit. And there's some truth to that. Like I think most homeowners, pet owners want somebody that is going to be responsible. And so if you're going to be applying for a house sit, you need to be able to show whether it's in like your profile or whether it's just like in the message that you send to them, or like you need to be able to demonstrate that you are responsible and that your kids will be responsible too. And then when you get the house sitting gig, like treat it like a job because, make sure that you show how professional you can be as somebody that can take care of a pet. Follow their directions, give them daily updates, walk their dogs whenever, or their pets whenever they need to be. Take them to the vet. Like we had to take the dog to the vet. Or like one of the house sitting gigs that we did, the dog just had like surgery. And so we were constantly like making sure that it was clean, giving her baths, and then like just sending daily updates to the owner. Like, look at this picture. Your pet is doing well today. They really like that.
Yeah. I think I think those are great points because at the end of the day, too, you're at least with a program like Trusted House Sitters, there's no money exchange. So they're not paying you to take care of their pets. The exchange is that you take care of the pets for lodging. And so with that mindset, like I think we go above and beyond to make sure that their house is treated well. We ask whatever they need us to do when we quote unquote check out, as far as like
Yeah.
stripping the beds, washing the
Clean the
sheets, that kind of
house.
stuff. Like, I think that stuff makes sense. And if that's not something that you as a family feel comfortable with, or you don't want to do, then maybe it's not an option for you. But
Yeah.
I know for us, we know when we book a house sitting that we know this is going to be more work than normal, but we're okay with that because we're also saving a lot of money on accommodations, and we're also getting to spend time in an area as a rent. Some of the places that we've stayed also are areas we would never stay as a vacation rental, because a lot of times they're like suburbs or small towns that
Yeah.
don't really have vacation rentals.
But they
So,
turn out to be some of our favorite places. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which is kind of similar. It's home exchange.
hmm
So, like, house swapping has been around for a while. I think this works if you have a home that you can swap with somebody else. We use a platform called Home Exchange. And basically, it's not like we don't have to do it as a one-to-one swap. We earn points when families or people stay in our home, and then we can use points to stay in somebody else's home at like a different period in time. So like that's helpful for us to lower some of the cost of traveling, but it does require it. This wouldn't be an option if you were like traveling full time and you don't have a house anymore, or somebody's renting your home long term, So this is more for like short term stints.
I think the other thing I want to point out that reminded me when you said that, for this and for house sitting itself, is that there's no guarantee of when these will come up or when you'll get approved for which ones. So your flexibility of travel dates needs to be, you need to be really flexible with your travel dates, because
Yeah.
I guess the thing I would caution is like, don't be like, oh, I need a place to stay next month and I'm waiting on a house sit or I'm waiting on a home exchange to come through, because it might not work out. So
Yeah.
you have to be really flexible with your travel, and maybe sprinkle that in with stays at Airbnbs or vacation rentals
Yeah.
so that you can fill those gaps.
Yeah.
As for beyond like kind of longer stays, there's a lot of times when we have short stays. What are some ways that we can save on accommodations for shorter stays?
No, I guess like if you're traveling in the US and you like to go camping, there's Hip Camp, which is sort of similar to Airbnb, but with camping. So you're staying at somebody's like private property, and it's usually cheaper than if you were, staying at like a lodging or something. But that requires you to have like the equipment
Yeah.
and things like that. Excuse me.
I think additionally, if you're international or even in the US, it doesn't matter. I think hostels often get associated with solo
Oh, that's
travelers
true.
or
Yeah.
couples,
Hostels.
but there's a lot of hostels now that are very family friendly,
Mhm.
like with private rooms or more accommodations than normal. So
Yeah.
definitely look into the hostels in your area. Additionally, if you're in the US, things like YMCA actually still has accommodation options similar to a hostel. They operate similar as a hostel.
Yeah.
And so you can look into YMCAs as well, especially when you're more expensive areas. Now, all these things come with kind of a little bit of a caveat, I guess, like couch surfing. We know families that couch surf as well. And that is definitely a way more intimate experience, I think, than
Yeah.
having your own room and stuff. So I think it kind of based on your family values, depending on your family's comfort level, there's all sorts of alternative accommodations you can find as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Do you remember this is like several years ago, and I don't know if they still do this, but like we stayed, it was in the off season, or not off season, but like we stayed at a university
Yeah.
campus dorm because the universities were offering it up for, rental when the school wasn't in session.
Yeah.
So I think like try and be creative with finding things. Like there's also like work exchanges where you're working in exchange for a home. And if you're not, you know, you're not working remotely, or you don't have a job that you need to like devote some time of your travels to, like that could be an option for you and your family is working.
Yeah. And we've mentioned this in the past too. Worldschooling hubs is an interesting way because they're kind of all inclusive. They can be all inclusive packages or stuff. I wouldn't necessarily say that's an affordable accommodation because a lot of those Worldschooling hubs end up being pricier than if you were finding your
in
own
terms of lodging. Yeah.
But they do kind of offer an all-inclusive experience. And so that in the long run, that might work out on your budget for that reason. But there's a couple other ways I think that are, what do you think?
Something that we don't do, but friends of ours do really well is points travel. We've just never really gotten into it, although we want to. But we have a friend, Katie from Katie's Travel Tricks, that she's like the points travel expert, in my opinion. Yeah. She's always using it for her family to travel with.
Yeah, those are great because oftentimes they can stay in really nice accommodations for weekends or transition periods. So if you are transitioning from like a long-term to a long-term stay, sometimes you need those short-term stays in the middle just as transition points. And that's where I think points can really come in handy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we did it recently when we went and visited with our friends for New Year's. Yeah. And we had a bunch of Hilton points collected. Yeah. And so then we just stayed the night at a hotel and we didn't have to pay for that.
Yeah. What about, so in like recent years or part of Worldschooling, there's always been the conversation of cruises. Some families will do cruises as their Worldschooling adventure. Even the digital nomad community has, to a certain extent, embraced cruises as kind of the being able to long-term travel and still work remotely, but have kind of this alternate experience. We have some ethical questions around cruises just because of the environmental impact and things like that. But I think it is an intriguing thing, and several friends of ours do cruises in general. But there's something unique. How can you find affordable? I don't think people think cruises are necessarily affordable accommodations, but there is a way you can kind of make them affordable.
Yeah, so there's this thing called repositioning cruises. And basically, we're not experts on this and we haven't done this personally ourselves, but friends of ours have, actually several friends have done this, where, the after a route, the boat needs to go back to the port of entry or whatever. So it's just a route that is repositioning the cruise ship back to like where it started. Usually you can get like a discount. The cost of those are a lot cheaper than a regular cruise. You probably don't get the same amenities. I think that you still get a meal, but maybe not like the entertainment or the shopping or, the whole cruise package, but you get to stay on a boat and travel for like, 10, 15 days or something like that. So it's something that's definitely intriguing to us, but we haven't had a chance to personally experience it yet.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else?
I think that is it for now. I mentioned the house sitting article on my website. I also have written about Hip Camp too. So if you're curious to learn more about that, that's a fun like experience to do, especially if you are more like into the outdoors and or you have an RV that you can like travel around with.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Worldschooling Q&A with Astrid and Clint. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links we mentioned in the episode, and visit my website, thewanderingdaughter.com, to dive deeper into worldschooling and family travel.
If you like what you hear, please consider supporting The Wandering Daughter on Patreon. It really helps us out and keeps the show going. You'll also get exclusive perks like episode transcripts, additional resources, access to office hours with us, and more. You can find us on Spotify or the podcast app of your choice. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can tap the bell icon to get notified when new episodes come out. And if you like this episode, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps new people find our show.
If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap the bell icon to get notified of new episodes. You can follow me on Instagram @WanderDaughter or follow The Wandering Daughter on Facebook. Links to these are also in the show notes. If you have any world schooling questions you'd like us to answer for future episodes, feel free to throw them in the comments or send us a message at thewanderingdaughter.com/podcast. Until next time, happy travels!
Bye.